The rain had started just as Daniel Parker parked his old sedan outside the small Italian restaurant on Maple Street. It wasn't the kind of place rich people went to. The sign flickered slightly, and the paint on the walls had begun to peel. But inside, warm yellow lights and the smell of garlic and fresh bread made it feel comforting. Daniel glanced at the time on his phone. 7:02 p.m. He wiped his hands nervously on his jacket. It had been 3 years since he'd gone on a date. 3 long years since his wife passed away, leaving him to raise their 5-year-old daughter, Lily, alone. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, his friends had convinced him to try again. Just one dinner, they'd told him. You deserve to be happy again. Daniel wasn't sure about that, but he had agreed. Inside the restaurant, a waitress led him to a small table by the window. Your date will join you soon? She asked with a polite smile. Daniel nodded awkwardly. I think so. He sat down and looked at the empty chair across from him. For a moment, he imagined someone sitting there. Someone laughing. Someone who didn't mind that he was a single dad with more responsibilities than time. Someone who might understand. He shook the thought away. Don't get your hopes up. The waiter brought a glass of water. Daniel checked his phone again. 7:15 p.m. No message. No call. He texted her politely. Hey, I'm here at the restaurant. The message delivered. But no reply came. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Daniel stared at the empty chair again. He felt something familiar creeping in. That quiet feeling of embarrassment, of being forgotten, of realizing maybe he had been foolish to think someone would actually show up. Across town, in a luxurious black car stopped at a red light, a woman stared out the window with tired eyes. Sophia Carter, CEO of Carter Technologies. At 32, she had built one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Magazines called her the Ice Queen of business. Her employees called her brilliant. Her competitors called her ruthless. But tonight, none of that mattered, because Sophia Carter had just walked out of another disaster of a meeting. Her assistant had set her up on a blind date. You need a life outside the office, he'd insisted. She had agreed just to stop hearing about it. But when she arrived at the upscale restaurant downtown, her date never showed up. She sat there for 30 minutes, then 40, until she realized something. The man probably Googled her name and got scared. That happened more often than people realized. She sighed and leaned back in the seat. Driver, she said calmly. Yes, Ms. Carter? Just stop somewhere nearby. I'm not in the mood for another empty restaurant tonight. The car slowed as they passed Maple Street. Through the rain-covered window, Sophia noticed a small restaurant glowing warmly. Here, she said. The driver stopped. Inside the restaurant, Daniel checked his phone again. 7:40 p.m. Still nothing. He sighed and signaled for the waiter. I think I'll just. The door opened. A woman walked in. The room went quiet for a moment. Not because she was loud, but because she carried a presence. She wore a simple black coat, her dark hair slightly damp from the rain. Her eyes scanned the restaurant quickly, then stopped. On the only other person sitting alone. Daniel. Sophia didn't know why, but something about him stood out. Maybe it was the way he kept glancing at the empty chair across from him. Maybe it was the tired kindness in his face. Maybe it was the small drawing of a flower sticking out of his jacket pocket. She walked toward the host. 1 table for 1, she said. The host looked around awkwardly. I'm sorry, ma'am. We're actually a little full tonight. Sophia raised an eyebrow. The restaurant was almost empty. Then the host leaned closer and whispered, There's a man sitting alone by the window. His date didn't show up. Maybe You could share the table. Sophia looked over again. Daniel had already stood up, preparing to leave. Something inside her shifted. Fine, she said. Moments later, Daniel heard a voice beside him. Excuse me. He turned and nearly froze. Sophia Carter stood there. Even if he didn't recognize her immediately, it was impossible not to notice her confidence. Apparently, she said calmly, both of our dates didn't show up tonight. Daniel blinked. I what? She gestured toward the empty chair. Mind if I sit? Daniel hesitated. This woman looked like she belonged in a five-star restaurant. Not here. I mean, sure, he said awkwardly. She sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sophia noticed the small drawing in his pocket. She pulled it out gently. A child's drawing. A stick-figure man holding hands with a little girl under a bright yellow sun. Sophia looked at him. You have a daughter. Daniel nodded. Lily. She's 5. Sophia studied the drawing again. She's talented. He smiled slightly. She insists I carry one of her drawings everywhere I go. Says it's for good luck. Sophia placed the paper carefully back in his pocket. Smart girl. The waiter returned. Would you like to order? Sophia closed the menu. I'll have whatever he's having. Daniel looked confused. You don't even know what I'm ordering. She smiled faintly. That's the interesting part. Dinner started awkwardly, but slowly the conversation began to flow. Daniel talked about Lily, about working 2 jobs, about how hard it was sometimes to balance everything. Sophia listened quietly. For the first time in months, she wasn't talking about business deals or billion-dollar decisions. She was just listening. And Daniel, without realizing it, was doing something most people never did around her. He was treating her like a normal person, not a CEO, not a powerful figure, just a woman sitting across the table. By the end of dinner, something unexpected had happened. Sophia Carter was smiling, but then Daniel checked the time. His expression changed instantly. I'm so sorry, he said quickly, standing up. I have to pick up my daughter from my neighbor's house. Sophia raised an eyebrow. You're leaving already? He nodded nervously. She gets scared if I'm late. Sophia watched him grab his coat. Something about the way he said that felt different, real. Before he could leave, she spoke. Wait. Daniel turned. Sophia stood slowly. Then she said something that would change both of their lives forever. What if I told you I have an offer? You can't refuse? Daniel frowned slightly. What kind of offer? Sophia smiled calmly. The kind that could change your daughter's future. And Daniel had no idea that the woman standing in front of him was one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. Daniel stopped halfway to the door. Sophia Carter's words echoed in his mind. I have an offer you can't refuse. He turned slowly. For a moment he thought maybe she was joking. After all, they had only just met. What kind of offer? Daniel asked cautiously. Sophia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she picked up her coat and walked toward him. Up close, Daniel noticed something strange about her. She didn't look nervous like someone asking a stranger for something. She looked confident, calm, like a person used to making decisions that changed lives. Walk with me, she said. Outside, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle. Sophia's driver quickly stepped out of the black car and opened the umbrella. Daniel paused when he saw the luxury vehicle. It looked expensive, very expensive. Sophia noticed his reaction and smiled slightly. Don't worry, she said. The offer isn't about the car. Daniel crossed his arms. Then what is it about? Sophia looked directly into his eyes. You. Daniel blinked. Me? Yes. She leaned against the car casually. During dinner you told me you work 2 jobs. Daniel nodded slowly. A mechanic during the day, delivery driver at night. And you do all that while raising your daughter alone. Yes. Sophia studied him carefully. You also left dinner early because you didn't want your daughter to be scared. Daniel shrugged. That's what parents do. Sophia's eyes softened for a brief moment. You'd be surprised how many don't. The driver stood quietly nearby as the rain tapped softly against the umbrella. Sophia continued. I'm looking for someone like you. Daniel frowned. Someone like me for what? She paused, then said something unexpected. To work for me. Daniel almost laughed. You mean fixing your car? Sophia shook her head. No. She reached into her purse and pulled out a sleek business card. Then she handed it to him. Daniel glanced down at it and froze. The words on the card read, Sophia Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Carter Technologies. Daniel looked back up slowly. Wait. His brain struggled to connect the dots. That's Sophia Carter? She nodded casually. Yes. Daniel stared at her like she had just told him she was from another planet. Carter Technologies was everywhere. Phones, software, security systems. Even the delivery app he worked for used their technology. You're joking, he said. I don't joke about business, Sophia replied calmly. Daniel looked back at the card again, then back at her. So, why would someone like you offer a job to someone like me? Sophia didn't hesitate. Because of how you talk about your daughter. Daniel frowned slightly. That's it. No, she said. But it's the start. She walked a few steps closer. In my company, I have thousands of employees. Many of them are brilliant. Many of them are talented. But very few of them are people I trust. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You trust a guy you met an hour ago? Sophia smiled faintly. Actually, yes.